Yeah. What's a bill? Um,
Oh, they said sound. They have sound.
oh, okay. Yeah, there you go. Just needed for whatever reason, needed a quick. There you go. All right. Welcome to Overtime. My name is Nick Souter, and with me today is Ethan Prolib, who is rethinking his career choices in YouTube at the present moment.
No. Trust me. Audio issues are a part of live. Once every 4 or 5 streams, I have one too. It's a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Well, and so for
It's a
those
thing.
of you, we have not rebranded In Time. This is actually the second show. In Time is 4 shows. It's In Time, Overtime, the After Show, and Stitch In Time. And we've been doing, because we had never finished the interface for Overtime. We've been doing all the Overtime, which is the breaking news updates on our regular show. The downside to that is if you're not interested in that, if you're interested in our regular stuff, it's hard to tease out uh, the overtime from the regular in time stuff. So we finally got the interface done. So Lady Starfire, thank you very much for following. We really appreciate that, and thank you for your support. Yeah, it's been okay. We normally, and Ethan thinks I'm lying. Of course, he was here for the. I mean, you remember like early days of In Time, and we'd have something that would call you up and say, "Okay, there's breaking news," and you'd come on. As people
Sure.
think you're like a new addition to the show. You've been around for a while, and
Right.
but that would be like once or twice a month.
Yeah. At the most. At the very most.
And we've been, we've had a number of just weeks where it's been 4 or 5 times a week, and once we get into the new normal of lots of people died today of COVID, we don't have to update as much. But as things were changing, we're keeping them up. We've had a short time off. For the last week or so, where we've just sort of been doing our regular shows. I think Overtime is about to kick up again. In fact, I don't think it's avoidable. We're going to discuss that, but. Uh, uh, so we're going to do an update today, and we're going to let you guys know sort of what's going on and what we see. Unfortunately, coming on down the pike, some of this is I would never write this because, as Mark Twain said, the difference between nonfiction and fiction is that fiction needs to make sense. Nobody would buy a book that would be about 2020 at this point.
No. They'd be like, what? This hack writer is
Yeah.
is pretending that people just wouldn't care at the head of a government that all of their citizens are dying.
I should have done that. Okay, so which of the following? One of the following is true. Which is it? A bunch of wild geese have been released from Canada and are heading south, and we're about to get overrun by geese and geese poop. A huge desert storm from the Sahara is about to hit the United States, or a meteor is about to hit us. One of those is true. At least one, I should say. I can't rule out the others.
I think you mean at least one.
Yes. So let's get into it because 2020 is just a gift that keeps on giving. The break has been nice. We managed to update the interface. We're gonna finish some polish on the show. And again, thank you all very much for your support. We'll be having a Patreon meeting coming up in a bit. We're gonna get Ethan to attend those. When I'm there, nobody shows up, but it's like, oh, where's that hot hunky Ethan? And so now everyone's gonna show up to the Patreon meeting.
I don't know. I've never met him. I don't know.
Yeah. But thank you all for your support. So with that, we're breaking today up into 2 basic stories. The first one is shootings. So let's start with that. There are 3 notable shootings that have happened in the last 24 hours. First, in uptown Minneapolis, where 12 people were shot and 1 was killed last night. This is only one of 5 different shooting incidents that happened in the Minneapolis metro area last night. There's actually, nobody has any idea how or why. I heard it suggested it was gangs. It kind of has that look and or feel to it. Who on earth knows? But that's a lot of, and by the way, I mean, we get mass shootings in the U.S. in some years more mass shootings than there are days in the year. We just don't, news doesn't report on all of them unless it's, more than 3 or 4 or whatever. But that's a staggering number even for the U.S. The U.S. is making a run for really going cray, and that's in Minneapolis. So something's going on there. We don't know what yet. We're keeping an eye on it. But 12 plus an extra 4 shooting incidents. Wow. Those we do know. The only things that we know is at a minimum they have cases cases, the shell casings for over 50 rounds from at least 3 different weapons.
God.
So, yeah. So that's Minneapolis, and I don't know if that's a coincidence. It's entirely possible it's a coincidence. It's entirely possible 2 rival gangs are going out over Floyd. Who knows?
Sure.
But that's what's going on over there. Meanwhile, in Syracuse, New York, 9 people between the age of 17 and 53 were shot when someone pulled up to a large gathering and opened fire. The 17-year-old was shot in the head. He's currently in critical condition. The other injuries are all non-life-threatening, so that is lucky. Those kinds of gatherings are, in fact, still prohibited in New York. Nobody knows how they gathered. Well, how they got. They obviously got together. You can't really police that thing, but they should not have been together. There was no license given, no permit, and nobody knows how or why shooting occurred. But we have had incidents of people shooting at protesters or shooting. So I don't know whether that was it, but that was another little cray thing. And then a shooting in the CHOP or CHAZ zone in Seattle, Washington. That's 9 blocks in Seattle, Washington, in which protesters have basically occupied it. Now, initially, when the protesters came in, they declared this an autonomous zone and said that they were free from essentially any rule from the either local or state or even federal authorities and or law enforcement. The problem with this is that's called secession. I'm not trying to be glib. That's not a joke. That's called secession. When they figured that out, and they realized that there's actually some very serious legal problems with what they've done. They rebranded from the I think it was a Capitol Hill autonomous zone from CHAZ to CHOP, Capitol Hill not Occupy, so organizational. Oh, geez, I apologize, I've forgotten the organized protest. Capitol Hill organized protest. So they rebranded. Basically on the grounds that they didn't want to be seen as secessionists. They're still technically secessionists, but that's why they rebranded. Now, we get this in Texas every now and then. We get a compound that just goes, okay, we're no longer the United States. The police surround the compound, just starve them out, and you start getting radio signals to the UK going, we've seceded from the US, please help us. It's like the UK.
Right.
The UK is just like, I didn't hear that shit. What? So Coessa 5001. Why so many shootings? Is this a sudden spike, or just cases being reported? No, this is a spike. Normally we average about 1 mass shooting a day in the United States. Depends on how you define mass shooting, and a lot of pro-Second Amendment advocates will say, "Oh, that's not true." It is true. When you define a mass shooting as in 3 or more people who have been shot in one incident, if that's a mass shooting, we get a minimum of, on average, about 1 a year, sometimes more or less, give or take. This was 5 in Seattle alone and 1 in New York. This is higher, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's stir crazy. Ethan, any?
I think it's a lot of things. I definitely think that stir crazy or being cooped up, however you want to define that, is a big part of it. I think that there's just generally a high level of stress right now throughout the United States due to all of the different things that are going on. And I think that there's some pent up, a lot of pent up anger, dissatisfaction, I guess is really the word that I'm looking at the establishment, at the hierarchy. And that is what's, it's like a let-off valve. You see the steam escaping. And it's a horrible way to put it because people were hurt, obviously. But It's like that, and this is the way in which they're finding a way to relieve that stress. I mean, it adds more credence to the fact this is why we need to take money away to end the war on drugs and instead take that money, invest it into mental health facilities, mental health workers. We need to wage a war on mental health in this nation, not waste time on an ineffectual war on drugs. And we don't do that with more police. We do it by listening. We do it by being there for people. We make sure that they have ways to healthy ways, constructive ways to relieve the stress. Imagine if everybody right now, instead of going out and wanting to shoot each other, wanted to go out and plant trees, wanted to go out and make their communities better, not by burning them down, but by improving them. Imagine if they were inspired to do so. Imagine if they had the means and motive to do so, which they don't right now. Riots are the language of the unheard, as I believe it was Malcolm X who said that, right?
Actually, no, it was Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh, it was Martin Luther King, right? I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure if you were just trolling me when you said
no,
that.
I wasn't trolling.
Okay.
My memory sucks.
No,
but yeah, riots are the language of the unheard, and you have a bunch of people who are unheard, and this is what they have to do, is violence. Because I'm going to be doing a show on this on my channel very soon. But the electronic voting machines, all year long, the electronic voting machines have changed votes. They've lost votes. They're not available. And, people are being told, well, why aren't you voting to change the system? Because that doesn't work. And this is the safety valve that they have. This is the release that they have. And that's why they're choosing this avenue, because all other avenues are blocked and have been blocked for them for a long time.
And gerrymandering too, which shouldn't be underestimated. Yes. And I think that's one we should actually do an entire show on. We should do a show on it, just the disenfranchisement and how that's done. I think that's
sure.
I think you brought up an excellent point, and the mental health on the. Yep, all good points. I'm gonna mute him from now on because he keeps coming up with all the good ideas. Like, I'm gonna watch. I'm just gonna go over to Ethan's shoot in time. What? No, it's yesterday's news. We're gonna watch it. I think those are spectacular points. It's more than we would expect under any normal circumstance. And the 5 in Seattle, not Seattle, sorry, in Minnesota, not Minnesota. Wow, I'm sorry, my brain is the 5 in.
I just mixed up Malcolm X and MLK.
Yeah,
happens.
Minneapolis. Sorry, the 5, because it's Minneapolis. You just have to sit there and say, is there anything associated with that there has been a reduced police presence, not by a huge amount, but one town has disbanded its police department. I don't think that's the cause of this, but that's still. So at any rate, there's been one other shooting which is worth mentioning. 2 people were shot in the CHAZ zone at 2 a.m. this morning, and that's relevant because there's no police there. Now, in that zone, as we were saying, they've declared autonomy, and they have said no police are welcome, no federal authorities are welcome, and they have barred them. So at present, it's the honor system. Now, we had somebody who came in who had been there, and he was there. I will point out he was there during the day, but he was there. He described it a bit as as a festival. It's just kind of like shops and people being. And I think that's spectacular. I think it's going to be hard to keep that because you're going to encounter the kind of problems that you're seeing now, which is that you still have to have some law and order come from somewhere because people get their own ideas, and some of those ideas aren't as hospitable as others. At any rate, what appears to have happened yesterday was 2 people were shot. One was pronounced dead at the hospital. It was difficult. Nobody could find these people because what we're going to do now is we're going to play footage. The shooting was not caught, but the time of the shooting, we have audio of the shooting. It was caught by several security cameras. The police tried to go in to render aid and to figure out who shot who and figure out who's got a gun and who's shooting people. They were resisted. They were still able to enter, although it was not easy. They basically had to wait till they amassed enough that they could go in. They did not engage in any force, although they were met with what they called I think it was well, they described it as a violent crowd. I don't know if it was violent. It was certainly hostile. And so they came with EMTs to attempt to figure out who had been injured, if anybody, and to see if anyone needed medical attention and get them to the hospital. After they were pretty far in and near the area, they had somebody informed them that CHOP or CHAZ, quote, medics had already taken these people to the hospital. I didn't know that CHAZ had medics, but apparently they do. Yeah, which is what I said. You end up needing some form of organization. The police
Sure.
officers did
Yeah.
attempt to find out who had done the firing. They started to do some sort of investigation. They were resisted in that. At present, nobody knows whether there's even. Let me rephrase that. I've been unable to determine whether or not there's any detectives in the zone working. The official police line is that they are being resisted, but that they are doing their investigation and that they are able to investigate. I don't know what that means or how. One of the two people died when they got to the hospital. What is CHAZ? It's an autonomous zone. So it's about 8 or 9 blocks in Seattle, Washington, where protesters have basically kicked out the police. There is, in fact, a police station there that has been abandoned. The Seattle Police Department has now said they want it back and that they would like to have some presence, at least in that station. What that means, nobody knows, and they have said that they will not attempt to take it by force, but they feel like there has to be some kind of police presence there at this point. As a result of this, the leadership in the zone has declared that they do need some form of citizen patrols, and there are now armed volunteers who are patrolling the area. We'll discuss that in a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to see the footage. This is footage of the police entering the zone initially to attempt to find if there was an active shooter and if so, where, and to identify any injured parties and to help assist them either by providing first aid there or taking them to the hospital. And they're informed about halfway in that they've already been taken to the hospital by CHAZ medics. This is from a body cam.
I'll take the other one.
Please move out of the way so we can get to the victim. All we're trying to do is get to the victim and provide them aid. Please allow us to get fire in the area to provide them aid.
All right.
truck.
So it very well could be that Seattle police mustered their forces outside of the zone until they had the appropriate manpower to come into the zone. I don't know, but now you got another situation because you got the police who are now not necessarily surrounded, but there's definitely there's a lot of people out here.
No. The same shit you're dealing with every fucking day.
Move your cars. Go. Go. Follow the line back, our vehicles. Go, community, go. Pepper spray. We're trying to I know. I'm not saying okay, move down this direction to our vehicles. We have a head count. Please! No, get your vehicle and go. Go over the curb and out. Jerry. If you got a two-man car, fucking go. Where is Officer Babcock? Back up! No! Back up! Back up! Say that again. He's not in his vehicle.
What was the status at HMC?
Move! Move!
Security
Move!
back just now.
Move out of the way!
Present with multiple
Move
rifles.
out of the
They're
way!
currently aggressive.
Move out of the way!
Car entrance, I believe, with their vehicles.
All right, and Ethan and I were chatting during the video. He couldn't hear it, so I was describing to him what the sound was. Hopefully, by our next major broadcast, I will have that fixed so that the sound can be piped to him. Right now, he can see it, but he can't hear it. So, and I thought that was worth describing what was going on. So at this point, they have now they've established their own security force inside the zone. There are volunteers who are armed, and we do have now at least one incident of one of these detaining a reporter. Well, I shouldn't say a reporter, citizen journalist. It was a YouTuber who was there streaming, and they said, we don't allow media here, and he was detained. He was released. The officials who run the organization said that this was not done officially. They don't know who detained him. He said it was someone who was armed, but that's all he knows, and that's what's going on. And at present, there is some tension in the area that things are getting a little out of control. So, Ethan, what are your thoughts?
You know, one thing that I've tried to keep in mind throughout this entire thing is that right now, my thoughts take a back seat. Instead, what I've done is I've just watched videos and I've read the writings of minority people in this country, and I've done everything I can to listen. And you know what I hear from them almost universally is that this nation was built on their backs. They have spent generations doing jobs that more privileged people refuse to do for pay that more privileged people would refuse to take. And for that, they've had police brutalize them in numbers that are not equal to the numbers of other communities. And I saw a picture of a young man on Twitter I don't know. Someone sent it to me a few days ago in the Discord, and he was holding a sign that said, "We're not starting a race war. We're trying to end one." And I think that the people of these communities feel as if they have been fighting for every single scrap and every single step for generations, and they are tired of it. And it saddens me that it's come to this, but really, what did you expect? That's my thoughts.
I think that is very well said. I think it was something that Fifth Dimensional Jake had said, which I thought was interesting, which was that what he had heard was, also among other things, and this obviously isn't the only message or even the biggest one, but it was one that resonated with me. Allow us to make mistakes. If this is a mistake, instead of sitting there saying this is a mistake and you shouldn't be doing it, allow us to make mistakes and listen. You can still listen. You don't have to just sit there and say everything you do is a mistake. You have to fall in line, and if you're not, we're not going to listen. We're human. We're speaking. Listen. Other people can make mistakes and that doesn't dehumanize them, but if you don't like what we're doing, we don't have a voice anymore. So I thought that was interesting. My concern, and I would imagine this is one you share. It may not be. I don't know. My concern is, I guess, a couple-fold. There are certainly people in that zone, residents in that zone, that didn't ask to be there. And it's just what was declared part of the autonomous zone. And if you happen to live there, guess what?
Sure.
And I'm concerned. What?
I think a lot of the ancestors of a lot of African Americans would have said the same thing about their plight. They didn't choose to be here. It's where they were, and they were born into slavery. So I'm not trying to justify what's going on in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying I understand. That's it.
I think that makes sense. So out of curiosity, what do you think should happen, if anything, now?
Do you know what happened on April 23rd, 1982?
No.
The formation of the Conch Republic. Are you familiar?
No.
The Conch Republic was formed when Key West and a few of the other keys in Florida seceded from the Union over a dispute with some border guards. They did it as a protest, essentially. They didn't mean it, but they informed the Secretary of State of Florida that they had seceded from the Union, and they had formed their own republic, the Conch Republic. And the Secretary of State's office went down there and said, "You cannot do that. That's don't
Bad Republic.
You can't do,
Bad Republic.
Bad Republic. Their motto to this day is, "We seceded where others failed."
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. They didn't go through with it, but they did it to make a point that they felt that there was oppression going on. And I don't remember the specifics of the secession reason. It was something with the Border Patrol guards were mean to. I don't remember. I just don't remember. It was something to do with the Border Patrol. That's all I recall. I'm sure someone's looking it up right now to fact check me. But one of the most famous protests in U.S. history didn't happen the way everyone thinks it happened. The Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party was arguably one of the most peaceable protests to happen in U.S. history. Large protests. I mean, there were a lot of people involved in the Boston Tea Party. They went onto all the boats in the harbor. All of them. They very calmly took the people on the boats and took them off the boats and said, "Listen, we're doing this. Just go over there." Very few people dressed up. Some did dress up in different garbs. There's historical historical accounts that people dressed up like natives and stuff that happened, but it was on a very small scale. One man who was part of the protest was found stuffing some of the tea into his pockets, and the rest of the protesters took him, stripped him naked, and sent him home. This was about a protest. They picked up the crates of tea off the boat and they just dropped them in the water. And it was they set up assembly lines and they got all the tea off the boats and they dropped in the water and they went home. Well, they probably stopped by the tavern real quick. I don't think that they thought, just like the Conch Republic, that they were going to start something so big. They were just protesting a thing, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that the people inside of CHOP thought that it was going to get to here. They were just protesting a thing. And it grew into something much larger. So, we're sitting here now, 2 weeks, I think, since this first started, talking about much bigger things than what the people at the very beginning imagined was going to happen. They didn't think that it was going to turn into this. They had no idea, but now it is, and they're doing what they're doing in the moment to deal with it. Again, I don't think that there's a plan. I would like for them to. I want the people in that community, all of them, to get to a place where they feel safe in their community. Some of them want cops there, some of them don't. And until those two sides come to an agreement and figure out what the end result is, we aren't going to have a resolution short of sending the police or the National Guard or whoever in to, forcibly rectify the situation, which we do not want to say. Okay, so Jake 4D says, and hi, Jake. People at CHOP said today it was not racial, it was gang related. Okay, and Jake, I don't doubt that. It probably is gang related. That makes sense to me. But I don't think that at the beginning when this started that they had any idea it was going to get to where it is today. They just wanted a certain thing to happen because they were dissatisfied with another thing, and then it happened. At Lexington and Concord, no one thought that they were starting the Revolutionary War. There was just militias that were fed up with tax collectors, and they met up with some British soldiers. Someone's gun went off, and a whole bunch of people died. Right? No one was starting a war that day, but they did. So I think we sit here in hindsight and try to rationalize and figure out a bunch of stuff, and sometimes shit just happens, and you got to figure it out.
I think I think that makes a lot of sense. I would imagine that when they started this, they were just talking about occupying a small area and maybe just doing like either an Occupy Wall Street kind of thing, and then all of a sudden now they've accidentally seceded. I certainly don't think anybody woke up that morning and said, "Hey, let's do that." My concern
no.
My concern is it's sort of I think what you said when we finished the video, I think made a lot of sense, and so now we've got a problem where I think they have very legitimate systemic problems that have been left ignored for far too long. On the flip side, I'm actually really quite profoundly concerned about the idea that they are starting to arm people there and say, okay, you're now a volunteer because they may or may not be trained. Who knows? I don't know that anybody there is capable of training anybody. I don't know. And when there's already tensions kind of going high across this country, and I have to believe there too to some extent, and there isn't a plan. I'm worried about what the next step of this is going to be, because if they're arming people to operate as police, well, I think a huge part of the problem is racism. Another part of the problem is genuine abuse of power. And you're going to get that whatever race is watching whatever. That was the Stanford prison experiment, but that's been and we showed the officer who shot and killed a 17-year-old white kid who was just mouthing off. That's all he was doing. He was being a 17-year-old punk, and for that he was shot and killed. And that's a cultural problem in the U.S., but that's one that's going to develop anywhere. So I'm just concerned. I'm very concerned about where that's going to head next. So I think that's sort of where I stand on it. But I think you've brought up
Sure.
some excellent points.
No, and I see all these. If these YouTubers, who are ultra racist, think that people like me don't watch them, I watch your stuff. I'm not subscribed, but it comes up in my feed sometimes, and I watch it occasionally. It's not, in my top 20. But there's been a lot of them lately talking about the myth of white guilt, right? Well, I don't have any white guilt, but I can see with my eyes and I can hear with my ears. I don't feel personally responsible for the society that I was born into, but I am responsible if I don't do something to change it so that it stops happening. I don't know what that would be called, but it's not guilt. It's I feel emboldened, and I feel like this is the time for change, and I think real change is going to happen out of it. No! Oh, ban that man. Ban that man. How dare you? How dare you, sir?
Did someone question the cost of the suits? I wasn't watching because
Dr. Zayas says I'm subscribed to Andy Worski. How dare you?
How
dare you? Shaking my fist in your direction. Ban that man now. I demand it. Not really. I like him a lot.
So, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, and that actually does, okay, so there's, I just received, what they've been asking for on the Capitol Hill, organized protest, what they've been asking for, but it's been amended on the website. I don't know if the people who I don't know if that's an official because it is nebulous, and they've said nobody there speaks for everyone, which is true, and I think that's a good sentiment. But the latest that I heard that they have been saying that their demands are, and actually I don't know if I have the latest. I don't have it. My computer died, and I lost But at any rate, let's get back to it. I think we're going to be covering that, and I'm nervous because now that there's been some significant violence in there, regardless of how it occurred, that's where these things start to. I don't know what's going to happen. I hope. I don't think anyone's got a plan. I think you're right. I think they don't have a plan, and I don't think the government has a plan, and I think everybody's just sort of waiting itself out. But that continues to work so long as things in there stay civilized.
Sure.
So far, I think they've been remarkably so up until now.
Yeah.
And I hope this is a outlier, of which there's always something like this is going to happen no matter what. A long enough timeline is going to happen in the most utopic societies, but I'm concerned. So let's put a pin on it in it because we've got other. Oh dear Lord, yeah. So we had the. And people think I was joking. I should actually make people guess whether it's the flock of geese coming down from Canada that are going to poop on us. We
have another super chat real quick from Jake, and then we'll get over to that.
Please, I've lost my window going to the Discord. So
you're good. You're good. I got you.
Thank you.
Jake says these rules and demands are being voted on this week. They're holding daily meetings. They're updating the proposed rules demands with input. So it looks like the people inside CHOP are listening, and they're working towards a resolution, and that heartens me. I'm glad to hear that.
Me too, and I hope it stays that way. And like I said, you can't. This is one thing. It doesn't mean things have suddenly headed south. It doesn't mean that things are stable. You can't tell just by one thing, but it's
Sure.
a concern, and so I see why. So yeah, no. The question I posed at the top was, I said, okay, we're going to be announcing something. It's either going to be that geese, thousands upon thousands of geese are coming down from Canada, and there's going to be a problem with poop, excrement, and all this, and we have to prepare waterways, and because this is a serious situation. There's a dust storm coming in from the Sahara Desert that's actually going to cross the ocean and hit the United States, or there's a meteor that may be on its way towards the planet Earth. One of those three things is in fact true. At least one of them is true. So,
well, before you give the answer, I want to tell a story real quick.
please.
All right, so if you're a subscriber to my channel, I uploaded a vlog this weekend, starring the toddler and Batsy. We were out at the park, and I just started filming with the GoPro, and it ended up being a vlog on the channel. It's short. It's like a 4-minute little thing. One moment that I missed was when we first got there, and the toddler decided to feed the geese.
Uh-oh.
And it ended with her up on a park bench, surrounded by geese, hissing at her crying, and I had to walk in and pick her up and just walk away. Yeah, those geese, and there was this one that was just hissing at me. He was hissing at me and putting his wings up and stuff, and I'm like, dude, you were a Tyrannosaurus Rex a long time ago. Don't even.
Oh,
But
boy.
yeah, they're especially, yes, Dr. Zayas, especially when you're 3. When you're 3 and you're shorter than them, they're scary.
Oh,
They're
geez.
scary.
And they're mean. They are
Yes.
mean. Those are mean
can be.
creatures. Most people don't
can
underestimate
be.
just how vicious they can be. All right, I will
Yeah.
give away the. It's not. I don't know why. Tony has this thing about sodomy geese. I honestly don't know why. I don't know if it's like something he's looking forward to, or if it's just like he read it in a book somewhere, but that's not actually it. There is a dust storm in the Sahara, which has actually now been blown out over the water. The particles are so fine that, yes, the particles can and will, in fact, now make it to the U.S. It's expected to hit us about midway through next week. We're keeping an eye on that as well. We are going to get a desert dust storm in the United States next week.
Because of course we will.
Because of course we will. What they're saying right now is all you can expect really is there's going to be kind of a change, a discoloration of the air. The air is going to turn into kind of a milkier white. But people with asthma are going to have difficulties. There may be troubles with some cars, especially cars that are sensitive to what goes into their car filters. For most people, it'll be like a bad allergy season, but that's what they're predicting. They don't yet know, but yes, there is in fact a dust cloud from the Sahara Desert on its way. It's not anticipated to be a huge deal, but it is going to be a deal, and we're going to get hit. So, we'll keep on that. We'll let you know. And then the last thing, which we of course have to cover.
Yes, which plague follows the dust storm, Nick? Please tell us.
It's actually the plague that's before them. It's the COVID, but it's I'm doing them out of order. We're expecting frogs in about 3 weeks.
Right. Yes.
I'm
gonna go slaughter a goat and put the blood over the door.
Yeah, it's
I'll be
gonna
right
hit
back.
the East Coast. It's gonna and it's gonna hit. I guess it's gonna hit Florida first. So maybe there is a God. But at any rate, I'm sorry. I have a thing for Florida, Texas. I get a little triggered. Okay. Sorry. In COVID news, we've discussed this before, and actually, a lot of people talk about a second wave. Technically, it would still be the conclusion to the first wave. We haven't finished the first wave. We slowed it down, we flattened it, but we actually didn't finish the first wave. Most people talk about it as a second wave. I usually talk about it as a second wave. That's the easiest way to discuss it. But we're looking now not just a second wave, but a first peak. For New York, it would be a second peak. For most of the U.S., it would be a first peak. And a peak is it's not a wave. A peak is where the system gets overwhelmed. There's so many people sick at such a rapid pace that the country cannot cope, or the medical systems can't cope. That's what happened with New York last month. 12 states today recorded record cases. This is including, this is record cases. So this is including since even before the lockdown, the urgency with which we actually did the lockdown. We have 12 states have now exceeded that. Trump is claiming, and repeated this claim today at a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that this is actually the result of increased testing, despite the fact that we still remain behind nearly every other industrialized nation in that regard. Also, if you increase testing, the result should be, if we'd been increasing testing at the way he's been talking about, because he's said we're testing everybody. He has said tests are available for everybody who wants them. Neither of those are true. They are both lies. They're not even lies. They're really just bloviating. I don't think he knows either way. I don't think he's conscious of the fact that what he's saying is complete and utter horseshit. Nonetheless, to give him the benefit of the doubt, I'm not going to call him a liar. I don't think he's lying. I don't think he cares. It isn't true. It simply isn't true. Our testing still remains behind most industrialized nations, and we know why the cases are going up. The cases are going up because of the states that opened up early. They're going up fastest in the states that opened up early, and as states 2 weeks, it's always 2 weeks after the opening up, you see the rates go up in a predictable pattern. It happens in each state based on when it opened up, and it has nothing to do with the testing. He's got a valid point. It's not even muddies the waters. It's got nothing to do with, and the more testing you do, the more you should be able to lower the numbers after about 2 weeks, because you're isolating the people who you know are sick. Regardless, he has today suggested that he should slow down the testing because it's making him look bad by increasing all the numbers. This has been universally condemned by the medical community as a phenomenally dangerous idea. White House advisor Peter Advalaro said today that they are in fact preparing for a second wave, but he suggested that they're preparing merely because, well, gee, we prepare for all contingencies. He didn't expect one, and he sort of suggested that nobody should expect that we would get a second wave. This is a dangerous misunderstanding of our current situation in regards to this pandemic. There will be a second wave. The fact that these numbers are already at record highs in 12 states, if we shut everything down now, and nobody had any contact with anyone else, the numbers would still go up for another 2 weeks, because that's the lag time on this. And we're not going to shut down now. In fact, right now, states are still continuing to open up, which means the numbers will continue to accelerate upwards. I'm not making this up. This isn't a guess. This is a fact. People like to think that, or people seem to think that because it's in the future, we can't predict the future, and we know. We've known how. We made these predictions accurately in the Spanish flu 1918. We know, and it's been happening. There's some gray areas. We don't know precisely how many people are going to die. We don't know, and we're still trying to figure out mortality rates. But we know it's a logarithmic scale. We know roughly how often it doubles. The numbers have changed because people are maintaining social distancing. That'll help. It isn't going to stop it. So I personally, now he has... I think it was him. I think that was the advisor who also said that Trump was joking when he said that we shouldn't be testing for COVID because it makes him look bad. I'm willing to accept it was probably tongue-in-cheek. That's fine. 24,000 people have died from COVID in New York alone, 12,000 people in New Jersey, 8,000 in Massachusetts, 6,000 in each of Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Michigan. 122,000 nationwide, with 2.3 million cases. And that's less than a tenth of the population. That's less than 1% of the population. So, if the entire population gets it, which over time up to about 70% will get it, multiply those numbers by 100. Best case scenario, then, 100 times the 122,000 that we're looking at, Sorry, is it multiplying by 100 or I goof up the math on that? I assume it's what, 1 million? That's more than 1 million. 10 million? I don't know. Sorry, I'm doing the math in my head. It's a lot. We're looking at potentially a lot of fatalities, and let's ignore that for a second and just take the 122,000 that are dead right now out of 2.3 million cases. That's a lot of dead people for him to be sitting there and tongue-in-cheek joking about the fact that we shouldn't do any more testing because, oh, gee, it makes him look bad. I don't think it's that funny. He's also gone on record as saying that it will be over in a couple of weeks and that he's the one who saved millions of lives by locking down earlier than any other president would have when past presidents were telling him he should have done it already. And he has defunded the World Health Organization. I don't think he has the slightest clue as to what's going on. At any rate, we have now projected roughly 150,000 deaths at the beginning of next month. Now, keep in mind that we had 100,000 deaths at this beginning of this month. So that is a 50% increase over 1 month's time, and we were locked down for half of this month. That's a 50% increase. I know maths can be a little hard, but this is why it's so serious, and this is why he probably shouldn't be joking about it. And maybe shouldn't be defunding the World Health Organization, or at least if he's going to, wait until we're not in the middle of a pandemic to do it. At any rate, that's a 50% increase in a 30-day period, and we were locked down for half that time. So the question isn't, was he serious when he said we should stop testing? I don't really care. I think it was tongue-in-cheek. That's fine. The question is, why is he clowning around and going to rallies and being telling these jokes instead of fixing the problem? This is a global pandemic. He called himself a wartime president. Did he mean that? I granted him that. I said, you know what? You are. You are. Congratulations. I granted him that. Why doesn't he start acting like it? When is he going to start acting like it? Is he a wartime president or not? From now on, if he wants to be called a wartime president, I will give it to him because I think he is, and I would do that for a Democrat who was in office. But then he has to stop clowning around. If he's going to tell these kinds of jokes, stop pretending he's a wartime president. There's a war going on, but he's not being president. He's just telling jokes.
To be fair, did you see the way he attacked that ramp?
Oh God, he went up on that. Oh wow, he did.
Two things.
Please.
First of all,
get a super chat, which sorry, I got worked up again.
Yes, it's okay. You do the super chat. I have a question from somebody. Wants the list of the 12 states. Where can they get that?
Most of it's the southern states. You'd think I'd have the list. I don't. I will look it up right now. But right for $5. Is it possible to upload the in-time intro and theme as separate videos? I love them, and I love these streams. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. They actually already are available, and now we've updated them. And as new hosts come in, we update them. So we do need an update to all of the intros and everything. So we'll do that, and when they go up right on. But we should have the credits is available, and I believe a current intro for In Time is available, and intro for Stitch and Overtime and all those will be available soon if they're not. But thank you. Thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate the super chat. Thank you. And we will have those. Those should already be available on the channel, and if they're not, the ones that aren't will get up there. Let me figure out what the 12 states are that I know. Most of them are southern states. I know Florida is one of them for obvious reasons.
Speaking of that, was one of the things I wanted to bring up. So while you look for that, I follow on Reddit a subreddit dedicated to COVID in the United States, and there were a couple of doctors talking in a thread earlier today about Florida and Oklahoma. And one of the things both of them talked about was that there's a lag time over the weekend for reporting COVID cases. So there's some cases that are happening right now on Sunday evening as we're talking to you that actually won't get reported until Tuesday. And that's why usually those numbers on Tuesday and Wednesday in places are a little bit higher because they're picking up some of the cases they missed on the weekend. And both of them think that Tuesday or Wednesday or perhaps both, will be will be record-setting days in both Florida and Oklahoma for COVID cases and deaths. Florida is now at a level that is equal to where New Jersey was when New Jersey shut down. Jersey right now has almost eliminated COVID. Almost. They're at like 1% of where they were when they shut down. Florida is now at where New Jersey was when New Jersey shut down, and Florida is opening. So Florida is about to be. I don't even know. And there's no hospital system. This isn't a criticism on Florida, but their hospital systems are right now struggling to keep up. That's where they're at. 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, Florida is going to be in a very bad place. The end of July, beginning of August for Florida. I am very, very afraid for everyone who lives in Florida and Oklahoma right about a month from now.
And which is why I said this is why I think we're going to end up having to start streaming again more and more often because as of this moment, if we lock down right now 100% effectively, and everybody was in a little stayed in their homes, didn't leave for anything, we had food delivered, no problems. If we had perfect, just zero contact, these numbers would go up unabated in any way for about 2 weeks, based on our behavior to this point.
Right.
So the fact is the states have still been opening up during this. The numbers we're seeing are a result of what we were doing 2 weeks ago. We are literally seeing a time lag, a 2 week. We are paying the consequences for the actions that we took 2 weeks ago. That's what we're seeing today. So next week, we will be paying the consequences for what we had done last week, and 2 weeks from today, we'll be either paying the consequences or reaping the benefits of whatever we do today. If we isolate today, in 2 weeks, we'll start to see the benefit. The reason that's so serious is, and Ethan hit the nail, nothing can change that. And right now, Florida is barely keeping up. Nothing can, we could do everything right from this point forward. Nothing can change the fact that the cases will go up rapidly for another 2 weeks. Now, it used to be, before the social distancing, the number of new cases and the number of deaths was doubling every 3 days. That is an exponential growth rate. We have slowed that down. Nobody knows what the new growth rate is. The new growth rate is a result of social distancing. The problem is nobody knows how effective it actually is. Nobody knows how much people are actually doing it. And there's people who are violating it, but what percentage and what's, so it's very unpredictable, and it's going to take a while before we know. It took months before we realized it was a 3-day exponential doubling. We figured it out, and that's just what it is. Now it's a different number. We don't know what that number is. We're going to find out, I think. But since each state is doing it differently, at this point it's going to be very hard. And listen, I'm not trying to suggest there's no magic bullet where I'm trying to say that the answer is we all live in our homes for 16 years and never. That's not what I'm saying. And there's no such thing as a perfect world. There's mortality everywhere. You can get killed driving to work. But this is an unacceptably high risk, and I think there are easier ways to mitigate it. And when a governor in this country announces that, wow, he'd have taken this more seriously if only somebody had told him that you could go 2 weeks without showing any symptoms. Dude, if that wasn't the case, there'd be no problem. If you showed symptoms the second you got it, this would not be a pandemic. It's just, oh, he's sick, stay away. The reason this is a problem is because you can have it for 2 weeks without. Now, I still don't have access to the live chat. I'll get that back in a minute. But before I do, the 12 states are Florida, Texas, Utah, South Carolina, Nevada, Georgia, Missouri, Montana, Arizona, California, Tennessee, and Oklahoma. Those, according to data compiled by the COVID Tracking Project, are all the 12 states that have broken records for COVID infections just today. And I think you're right, because of the way that they track that, we're going to see a whole slew. So the next week, I think things are things are going to get bad, and it's one of those where it's sort of like you don't know what to do. It's sort of like watching a train wreck before it comes.
Right. TB Seeker asked, any word on the 6 White House security that tested positive for COVID yesterday?
That's a good question, and I'm sorry that I neglected to bring that up. There was 6, and then there was also I forget how many. I want to say 12, but I may be conflating the numbers. Members of the upper members of Trump's campaign staff that have tested positive as well. I haven't seen anything on it. I've been no, I don't know per se what that is.
One of the things that
check back again. Yes.
you should do that. One of the things that's concerning me as a football fan is that all of these teams are trying to come back to their facilities, and they keep having people on the teams test positive for COVID. I've said for a while, I really think the NFL needs to cancel this season. Like, don't try to have the season. You have teams of, because you don't just have the players, right? You have the coaches, you've got the assistants, you've got when a team goes somewhere else to have a game, it's hundreds of people going somewhere else. And it is exceedingly dangerous, I think, right now to have an NFL season. I respect what the NBA is doing. The NBA is saying we're going to have all of our games in this one arena. Everybody's coming here. Everyone gets tested every single day. We don't have people going all over the country, going to different places. These NFL teams traveling around everywhere can become little tiny micro exacerbators of the virus. Because, if a couple of people on that staff, a couple of people on that team have COVID and they all go to the wrong restaurant or store and they start a new spread wherever it is that they go in that city. That is exceedingly, exceedingly dangerous. I love the NFL. I'm trying to get more into soccer. Actually, I'm trying to get more into soccer. But I want them to just cancel this season. And I know that sucks for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they got Tom Brady. I'm so sorry about your luck.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you're breaking up. What was that? What Ethan?
But yeah, I would love to see. I would love to see the NFL cancel this season. I think that's the responsible thing to do.
I will tell you this because I think we don't do well with predicted events. So what is it? The child who you sit there and say you can have 1 marshmallow today or 2 tomorrow, and how much you can actually predict about their success in life by whether they take the 2 tomorrow or the 1 today. Right now we're saying you can have 1 marshmallow today, but the cost will be COVID and World War One. World War II. We were asked to sacrifice as a country for World War II, and we did. People forget what we did in World War II, and the men went to war. The women started doing all the jobs the men used to do, and they worked, and this entire country sacrificed, and we rationed everything so that it could go into this war effort. And we completely changed. That's a wartime president, by the way, because that's a war. And what you have here is at World War I, right after World War I is when the Spanish flu hit in the United States. And in Denver, they shut down. They did a lockdown of Denver. Why? Because over 100 years ago, they knew how flus worked then too. They knew how viruses are transmitted and how to stop it. They did a lockdown. This isn't a new thing. And after, I think it was about 6 weeks, businesses said, this is killing us. This is putting us under. You need to stop the lockdown. The governor of Denver acquiesced, undid the lockdown, and in a month and a half was forced to do it again because they lost. Denver itself lost more people to the Spanish flu than the entire state of Colorado lost to World War I. Denver lost more people than the state of Colorado to World War I. He had to do it again because the choice at that point wasn't save the economy or save the people. The choice was you were going to lose the economy. The question was, do you lose the economy and the people, or just the economy? And he said, we'll just lose the economy and we'll lock down and we'll deal with it. That's sacrifice. And there are ways to do soft opens. I'm still not a fan of that, but there are compromises. This isn't even close to it, but there's no leadership. There's no leadership. And the president's like, we'll let every state do whatever they want. So it doesn't matter whether you're locked down or not, because people from other states, it's porous and there's nothing. So we're going to get the worst of both worlds. But if we're really capable of sacrificing, like I've been told that this country can do, I'd like to know why a UBI would have been smart. A UBI would have been smart. No, build out the court.
Yeah, I don't like Yang's version of the UBI because it would replace social programs. Well, that's another topic for another show. We can do that show sometime. But I do believe in some sort of UBI, some sort of basic income that raises the bar at the bottom. We're a rich enough society that we can figure this out, right? That we don't need to have homelessness. We don't need to have scarcity. We don't need to have hungry people. It's silly that we do. But again, topic for another time.
Well,
I don't want to get into that.
But I
tonight,
mean, just for the somebody calculated that the UBI, realistically speaking, because every calculation for a UBI tends to, or most of them tend to ignore the fact that the money goes back into the economy and actually can end up boosting GDP. So you end up making at least half the money back that way. But somebody calculated that for 1 year of UBI is $5 trillion. We just did a $2 trillion bailout. So my question is, if you ended up giving that money as a UBI to every American citizen for 6 months, that would have been roughly the same cost. That's 6 months to stay at home instead of giving it to the businesses. And it did go to a lot of Americans, but I mean, most Americans got what, 1,500 at tops. So
yeah,
if Americans got instead enough money to stay at home for 6 months, that would have been a solution. It would have been a radical solution, but I think it might have worked. And we could
see, and I think that's the issue. I don't really think that's all that radical. We spend about $3 trillion a year right now on healthcare, and we do that through employer benefits. We do that through people paying their health, dental, vision insurance payments, and we do that through Medicare. You total all that up, it equals about $3 trillion a year that we spend right now on healthcare. That's just what we were going to spend this year, right?
Yep.
So you talk about $5 trillion. Oh my God, that's an astronomical amount of money. But then when you really think about it, we spend $3 trillion a year on healthcare right now, just sitting here, just doing what we're doing right now. I think that there's some people that you could cut out. Somebody that, as a single person makes more than, there's a number, I don't know what it is, but it's somewhere around $50,000 a year. They wouldn't need a UBI. Anybody above that as a single person, as a family, it's probably around 100 to 120. Much smarter people than me who are actually economists can tell you what the real numbers are. I've only read what they've said, and that seems to be about the median of it. But I think that it would also go a long way to addressing the systemic racism in the system, because the system is systemically racist. The system that we have right now, and we don't like to think about it, but the fact that we've got so many minorities in so many positions, and I saw somebody in the live chat earlier say, well, it's the way that they're raised is how you said it. And I meant to address it earlier and it just popped back into my head. No, you're right. It's absolutely the way that they're raised, because they're raised in poor communities. They're not given the same opportunities that other demographics are given. They're not, their schools aren't as good growing up. Their job opportunities aren't as good. They don't have the connections that people with more privilege have. So yeah, it is the way that they're raised, but it's because they're raised within a system that doesn't give them their same opportunities that people that aren't privileged get, or people that are privileged get, excuse me. So it's how they're raised, right? But it's not their parents' fault. It's the society that we've built. It's the society that we sustain.
The biggest indicator of how you're raised is how much money you grow up with. If your parents can afford to keep a parent at home to watch you when you could be getting into trouble, that's going to change things. If they can afford an education, if you are in a school district because in the US, we pay for our schools based on property taxes. So if you're in a rich community, guess what? You've got a good school district with after school programs that can keep the child there even when the parents are working, and with
Right.
drug rehab and all sorts of other things, so you nip problems in the bud before they start. We do need to start wrapping it up, but I will say this too. Somebody had said too,
We do.
they want to go back to normal. Dude, it's 2020. This is normal. Welcome
Welcome to normal.
welcome to the dust cloud, buddy. Enjoy next
Welcome to
week.
normal. Like, here's the thing. This is the way that it's always been. It's just that people are speaking up and not just speaking up. They're doing something about it. I interviewed, and it will be live on my channel tomorrow. Members have already seen it. If you're a member on my channel, you've already seen it. But I interviewed over the weekend Howie Hawkins, who is the Green Party presidential candidate. And Howie Hawkins has been a progressive and has been active in activism for 45 years. The man was getting arrested in the late 60s, and he's running for president for the Green Party. And I got to talk to him. It's pretty amazing. You're going to see that interview tomorrow on my channel. And one of the things that he says in that interview, because I asked him about the BLM protest, how he feels is, and he said, basically, I don't know what took you all so long. He said, the race riots in the 60s were mainly African-American people. The Vietnam protests were mainly white people. This is the first time that I've seen African-Americans and white communities coming together to protest something, and that's what makes them powerful. Welcome to the new normal. This isn't going away unless you fix it. And it's a great interview, and I'm excited to share it with everybody tomorrow.
And In Time has just dropped a link to that. Is there a link to that actual episode that we can drop, or is it just a link to you?
No,
the channel has been dropped, but
right. If you join as a member, if you go to my channel and join as a member, you can see it right now. If not, tomorrow 3 p.m. it's going to be released to everybody else. So,
right.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's a great guy. It's a great interview.
Perfect. And I do have, so I've got my breaking news alerts set to.
My oven is smoking, so I have to go. I'm sorry.
All right, go deal with
Goodbye.
that. Goodbye. Go deal with that. No. All right. Let me. Okay. Well, he's good. To be fair, I've known him a little while. I don't ever trust him near fire, and this is why. I wouldn't say that while he's here, of course, but just between you and me. All right. So I think to sort of put a cap in what we have covered, 3 major shooting incidents in the U.S., actually a great deal more in the last 24 hours, actually in the last really 12 hours. In Minneapolis, Michigan, there were 5 mass shooting events. 5 shooting events. At least one was a mass shooting of 12 people, 1 killed, with at least 50 shells found, and from at least 3 different weapons. Also, Syracuse, New York, 9 people were shot. 1 is in critical condition, a 17-year-old with a blow to the head. All this last night. Don't know. Somebody just opened fire on a crowd. There aren't supposed to be any crowds in New York, so I think they're looking into that, and they're looking into why somebody was, A, why was there a crowd? B, why was somebody shooting into it? And then 2 people shot in the CHAZ zone. 1 is dead, and updates to the CHAZ policies on sort of how they're going to deal with that. And I think we'll see. I'm an idealist, and I like the ideals of what's happening there, and I think Ethan put a lot of it better than I would have. So I'm glad he did. But having said that, I'm concerned because they're now talking about what any society that's in it for the long haul has to do, which is how you're going to police yourselves, and that's always a problem, and that's kind of the point. And I don't want their message to get lost in something that, if that heads south in any meaningful way, the entire Black Lives Matter organization gets painted by whatever goes wrong in CHAZ. If something really goes wrong there, people are going to say, "Oh, see, They can't do it any better. And that's not the point. That's not what it's about, or that's not true. It's completely it's apples and oranges. But at any rate, we're going to keep an eye on that because that's just a little concerning. Also, COVID is very much on the rebound, and at this point, I think we're going to be starting to have to stream probably reasonably soon, at least once a week again. Probably more than that if and when it starts to really escalate and states start to get overwhelmed. Fortunately, we are not there yet. I do not see how that can be prevented at this point. So we will endeavor to keep you updated. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Ethan, who bailed at the end, but still go to his channel and check out his interview. I think that's going to be a good interview. Thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the patronage. We will have Christopher Mowdy on actually Tuesday to discuss Tuesday 9 p.m. to discuss the art of science communication. I think it's very difficult to communicate what's going on in science, and I think because it's so poorly done, there's a lot of misunderstandings about what science is, what it does, and the claims it does or does not make. So I look forward to that discussion, and we've got a couple other interesting shows coming up. But until then, thank you all again for joining us. Those of you, for you who had asked, there is, I've just checked, we do have it, the intro, the official intro is up on our channel. We also have, and actually just for even like I think it's just like the $2 Patreon tier, you get access to the full music too from In Time, like the unedited, all that stuff. We've got that up on our Patreon page. I hope you will consider joining us. But thank you to our mods as well. I'll be in our Discord for a little while afterwards. If those of you want to continue our discussion on COVID, on the dust storm, on sodomy geese, and or on the CHOP or CHAZ zone or any other topic, I'll be in our Discord in about 5 minutes after the show. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a good night, folks.